Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for everybody to jump on. I've just put a little welcome here. Feel free to add what city you're in the chat box. We'll kick off in a minute or two once I see the participant numbers kind of at the level that we were anticipating. I hope everyone's doing okay in lockdown. I'm assuming that most people are dialing in from a city that's got restrictions. Oh, Sydney. Hi, Maria. I hope you're not homeschooling. Oh, hi, Helen from Melbourne. Oh, everyone's coming in. So we've got Sydney and Melbourne. Housebound, Christopher in Sydney. Few more Sydney, few more Melbourne. Oh, Andrew, hello. Sydney. Lisa, Melbourne, 2 homeschooling. Feel your pain. Oh, 124 cases today, Natalie. I hadn't seen the news yet. I guess actually Gladys is probably talking now in Sydney. Thank you for the news alert. Hi, Kate. Hi, Justine. Oh, homeschooling rocks. I love it. Oh, 48 infectious. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll just give it a couple more. Oh, yeah, we're nearly there with the numbers. So I'll just give it another minute or two for people to finish up what they were doing. Hi, Layla. Oh, hi, Marianne. How are you? Hi, Sarah in Melbourne. I don't think I got that one. Okay, just another minute. Oh, hi, Margaret in Melbourne. Hi, Philip. I think a lot of people joining today are probably in Sydney and Melbourne, which is helpful because a lot of our data sort of comes from those 2 locations. So I just wanted to also get a sense if people were dialing in from maybe Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane. We do a bit of work in Brisbane, so I just wanted to check. Great. All right, well, I think, let me just check the numbers again. I think we might be good to go. Oh, hi, Adelaide, got you. Oh, hi, Alice. Oh, hi, Julie. Right. Okay, I think we're pretty much there. Okay, I'll kick off. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I know it's been a tricky few weeks, actually, but today we're together to present the findings from our 2021 Salary and Benefits Survey. I'd like to start with a few introductions, if that's okay. So let me get my screen ready. So for those who haven't met me or talked to me in the past, I'm Angela Franks. I lead the Frazer Jones business in Australia. For those joining actually for the first time, Frazer Jones is a specialist HR and HSE recruitment business. We have offices globally and form part of the SR group. So we have that international reach, but we still have all the benefits of being a small team focused on relationships and quality work. So, and I'm so lucky to have an amazing team. I'm joined today by Denise Harmer in Melbourne and Michele Beale in Melbourne as well. Michelle's in a slightly different colour there because Michele leads our HSE practice from Melbourne, but is in a national role. And Kimberly Kenneth also forms part of the team there. And then it's myself and Roxane Sexton in Sydney. Roxane's going to be presenting on the Sydney market insights, along with Denise, who's also going to present the Melbourne insights. Denise is also going to cover Michelle's HSE update because Michelle's lost her voice today, but she's still with us, but just can't talk. And then in Sydney, we have, just the chat's taken over my screen. Karen Lyons is also on the team in Sydney. And thanks for saying hi, Michele. And we have a new joiner starting in Brisbane in about 4 weeks' time. So we're really excited to welcome Kate Benson to the team. Yeah, so we'll be introducing her in the coming weeks, so watch this space for that. Look, I wanted to cover a few sort of notes and maybe a bit of caveats before I start. When we started collecting the data, it was sort of March time of this year. And by the time we'd finished off the report in June, the world had already changed. When I say the world, our world in Australia had already changed a few times. So we managed to do a small face-to-face event in Sydney just before lockdown. And then we had one booked for Melbourne, but we had to cancel it with the cases changing on a daily basis. So we're back to Zoom, the trusty Zoom meetings, which we were always going to do anyway. But I think it's just important to note that when we refer to sort of like post-COVID, we kind of really mean 2021. So when we collected the data and when we sort of were writing the report, most of us were sort of back in the office a few days a week. Obviously, we've gone a bit backwards, but I just wanted to kind of, when we refer to COVID or post-COVID. And just talking about the data and how we collect it, when we present the data to the HR and HSE community, we really want it to be meaningful and valid. But I'm not an economist or a data expert, but our aim is to share those insights that maybe aren't necessarily in the public domain. We will cover trends that probably aren't really surprising, but just having that data to back up the generalizations that we all hear, it's reassuring and actually helpful and when you're trying to sort of make those decisions as a business about which path that you take. And then I guess my final point before we start is, I know we've called this a salary and benefits survey, and salaries are important and a huge part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, advising clients and candidates. But we actually wanted to just go a little bit further than just salaries and look at overall compensation, including things like bonuses. But really, what's probably more important is those drivers for retention and engagement at the moment. Salaries are changing constantly. Roxane in her Sydney update will also cover salaries, which is probably relevant to most markets. So she'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. So I'm not going to show you slide after slide of salary data, but we do 100% cover it in that sort of broader sense. So just the lineup for today, it's going to be data and trends from the survey, which I'll cover. And then Denise will do her HSE market update for Michele. And then Denise will do the Melbourne HR market update. Roxane will be doing the Sydney HR market update. And then we're going to do some Q&A. It's a bit confusing because there's a chat button and a Q&A button. So maybe chat can be in the chat. And if we do questions in the Q&A, I'll have a look at those questions whilst Denise and Roxane are chatting through their bit. So I won't look at it while I'm talking, but we'll come back to it. So let's talk about the survey. So like I said, we started it in March and we had 500 respondents. I'm just going to move my face out of the way so I can see the screen. And we had 42% male and 58% female, which is a really good split when we're talking about what good data looks like. The biggest category, just shutting down my windows, the biggest category this year is Gen X. So 47% of that sort of 41 to 56 years. The traditionalists, they're all on holiday, very jealous of them. We didn't have anybody in that category. Just a quick note as well, I'll refer to this as we go through, but we did actually do a survey last year at about the same time, March 2020, but when COVID hit, we just thought it was really inappropriate to be asking people about their employment situation when everything was quite unknown. So last year we probably had about 250 respondents. So it's not the greatest of data sets, but we do try and pull some trends where we can. Right, so next slide. So as I mentioned just before everyone was joining, well, while everyone was joining, the biggest data set really came from Sydney Metro with 55% of respondents in Sydney, 28% in Melbourne, and then 4% in Brisbane. We did have small representation in Adelaide, Perth, the ACT and Tasmania. We asked people sort of what their scope of role was. So 41% of people had a national scope, 28% local, 24% international, and 7% global. And actually, we had 30 industries this year. No more than 8% with IT and telco, sorry, IT and technology being the highest one. And just to list off a couple of other sectors, we have mining, professional services, energy, not-for-profit, insurance, financial services, construction, legal, retail, leisure, tourism and hospitality, government, FMCG and education. That's not obviously not all 30 of them, but a really broad representation. So then 74% were in full-time employment, and you can see there that the rest is kind of split up between permanent, part-time, interim or temps, fixed-term contract, and then not currently working. And then actually it was really nice this year because our health and safety category at 27% was higher than we did have the year before, and HR generalist is usually around 50% of everything that we do, just due to the nature of the size of the generalist space, so 37%. So I'm really happy with this split of specialisms when we're collecting the data for the trends. Again, a really nice spread of level of responsibility. So when we're going out and asking people about what's happening in their world, you know, asking just heads of is not helpful if you're in your team and you're trying to hire somebody at a consultant level. So again, a really good spread of data. We'd like to see it more even, but I'm happy with this year. And then size of organisation, again, a decent spread. The tenure, so this is really interesting actually. So again, when we asked people what was going on in their worlds, this was so March to June this year, and that's 6 to 9. So we asked people how long had they been in their role, and that 6 to 11 months is about right, like 16%. It was going to be low because that was really probably the height of COVID, so March, April, May last year. And then obviously that less than 6 months, that's really kind of from October last year, which is when we did see things to really start improving, albeit slowly, but they started improving. And just by comparison, last year when we asked people, when we did the 2020 survey, that second category of 6 to 11 months was at 40%. So people had been in their new role, 40% of people had been in their role 6 to 11 months. So that category was huge. So, right, moving on. COVID-19, what a pain. We asked people this year what had happened to them last year because we had to cut that survey. So we asked people how had they been impacted. 50% of people, and this is a comforting fact, said they're not impacted. 21% said their work increased, which is not surprising. Sorry, I've just got a bit of feedback there, I'm not sure why. Pay reduced, so we asked if their people pay reduced, got their pay reduced, and 16% said yes. Of that 16%, 10% were because their hours had reduced, but then other people had their pay reduced, but their hours actually increased. And I think we did see that a lot across professional services. 10% sadly made redundant. We also asked people about flexibility and, you know, what sort of flexibility, if they had flexibility pre-COVID, and 58% of people said, yeah, they did. So what's really interesting about that when we come to the flexibility part of this is that we didn't really ask people what that looked like pre-COVID. So that's still a high number, but I even think from that 58%, a lot of that flexibility has changed now. And trends, right, there are none. We looked and looked and looked. We really wanted to see that pay reduced or made redundant come from hospitality, retail, and we just didn't. It was honestly across the board, all sectors, all levels. Yeah, there was no one particular trend. So yeah, I found that quite interesting actually. We asked people about what happened with their salary and bonus in 2020. So the question was, did COVID-19 impact your expected bonus earnings? So 39% said that they don't have bonuses included in their package, and 17% said it was the same. 21% of people who were expecting a bonus didn't get one. 15% had their bonus reduced, 4% increased, and a 4% got an unexpected bonus. So there was a 8% people there who weren't too impacted or positively impacted. 43% of organisations ran a salary review. That's quite low, but not surprising. 50% said that their salaries remain the same, and 40% reported an increase of up to 5%. So I guess the takeaway there is from that small portion of people, if they did get a salary increase, it was only kind of quite small. So then we wanted to know at the start of 2021 what was going on. So 90% of people, so remember this is March, April, May this year, 90% of people said they were back to their pre-COVID hours and pay. 78% had returned to the office. 55% said that they were not working as they did pre-COVID. So 2% fully remote, 5% fully office. 7%, they still don't know what they're doing. Hopefully they might have some more clarity by now. And then 9% that 4 days in the office, 1 work from home. But you can see that that huge category to the 2-3 or the 3-2 approach is like 75% of people. So again, no surprises there, but just good to see it on paper. We did ask people about whether they think their companies had to rethink bonuses because of the expectation around flexibility, and 48% said, yeah, they've had to rethink what their USP is. And 69, so nearly 70% of organisations have changed its approach to flexibility. And you see all kind of cases of some companies have gone, really extreme in their flexibility compared to where they were, and some people might have just done some minor tweaks. Really depends on the industry you're in and what the business expects. So salaries and bonus for this year, 2021. So we asked people, do you anticipate getting a bonus in 2021? 40% said yep, 44% probably not, and 16% they still don't know. So, and then 59% of organisations will probably run a salary review this year. And again, 28% were still unsure. 69% of people expected a small increase, 17% said no increase, 5% said a large increase, and 9% are unsure. So it will be interesting when we come around and collect this data in a year's time to see what actually did happen this year. Right. We also asked people how satisfied they were with their overall sort of salary and benefits package, and it kind of came in at about 3.3, so nothing too exciting, but yeah, kind of middle ground. And a big part of the salary survey this year, so we kind of changed it up from the one we did last year as well, and I really wanted to hone in on benefits. So I created myself a bit of a task, which was we asked people what their top 3 rated benefits were, but it was a free text. We didn't define what the categories were so that people could just write down whatever they felt. So then I had to sift through all those answers, and this is what we came up with. So people rated their top benefit, 49% of people said their top rated benefit was flexibility, which is no surprise. And then from the people that rated flexibility number 1, they then said pay, and then they then said culture. Number 2, flexibility, no shock there. So that was 25%. And then career development and opportunities came in at 14% in that second category, and then culture. And then number 3, culture came in at 20%, and then with flexibility, career development and pay. So I think we've alluded to it a couple of times, but what is flexibility? Like, it means so many different things to different people. So what I've tried to do here is just kind of go through what people listed and talked about. So I'll just quickly run through them now. We've got, I've just got to move my box out of the way so that I can actually see the screen. So flexible hours, working from home, flexible on location, multiple sites, work time. This is what people wrote. So what work time means, I'm not too sure, but this is what they wrote. Being able to work remote, work-life balance, flexible work practices, hybrid working. So again, these are all kind of slightly vague statements, but they all kind of play to the same thing, which is flexibility means different things to different people. So flexible hours might mean starting late or finishing late, or it also might mean working, stopping, working, especially if we're in homeschooling and things like that. So career opportunities and development. People said being able to work on good projects, professional challenge, having training available. I think also a lot of people talked about working for a good brand, because I think that looks good on the CV, and that reputation in the market is, oh yeah, people who work there, they're good. Career progression, a financial contribution to education, exposure. I think exposure means, it could mean exposure to senior people in the business to learn from. It could mean exposure to great projects and great work. Online learning and support, role variety, secondments. So they were all things that came up under that heading. Pay. So people said, yeah, good base pay, pays well in the market, a good total comp, a competitive salary. Salary packaging came up quite a bit, and salary sacrifice. Culture. So this is quite a long list, but I'll go through them. Challenging environment, autonomy. So I guess this is autonomy to autonomy in your role, and maybe autonomy as a team. An engaging culture, that whole diversity and inclusion piece, working with good people, the company's got high integrity, really strong leadership, having ownership of your work, having purpose, a commitment to safety and environment, having a nice office environment, good communication, a supportive environment, reputation of the business, job satisfaction, and being values driven. So lots and lots of things in there. I think next year what we'll do, just to make life a little bit easier, is we'll probably choose some of these headings and then allow people to maybe write some comments. But yeah, there's a lot that came out of that. So just to finish up on my bit, we've got some insights really that we sort of, from questions that we asked at the end. So the question I asked, I'm just going to pull up exactly the wording I used, was, do you think your organisation's culture has changed as a result of COVID? And 56% of people said, yeah, they think that the culture has changed, but that was actually yes for the better. So that's really comforting, I guess. Yeah, in a time that's been so difficult for many people. Then we also asked, do you feel more loyal to your organisation because of the their response to COVID? And 40% said, yep, I feel more loyal. 35% said not really, but it's hard because those people might already feel quite loyal anyway. And then 25% said, yep, no, I'm unsure, not sure. Then, and this will kind of play into some of the things that we talk about in the market updates, but we asked people, are you thinking of changing jobs in the next 6 to 12 months? And 45% of people said yes. So that's a big chunk of people that, across all levels, if you think about it, that are going to be looking for a new job. I'm just going to quickly on this point say thinking. So there's a difference between thinking and doing. So Roxane and Denise will also talk a bit more about that. We asked people what their motivation would be for a new role. And the first is an increase in salary. The second would be professional development. And then third is flexibility. And I think that's interesting because we've been, obviously last year when we see the data on the lack of pay reviews and salary increases, that's no surprise that people are looking for that. And then I think flexibility is probably at number 3 because it's expected. It's just about honing in what you think that flexibility is going to look like. And then the last question, the takeaway, we asked people, would you take a role paying the same or less if it gave you the flexibility you needed? So would you take less money? And 44% of people said, yeah, I probably would, because that's going to offer them something that they don't already have. 36% of people said no. So again, still a big group of people, but it's just an interesting kind of trend to watch. The outlook, so we asked people how they felt at the start of this year, how they felt about the short-term economic outlook. So the next 6 to 12 months, and 71% of people thought it was going to strengthen. It'll be interesting if we did that right now, because yeah, it's been a bit up and down this year. And then we asked people about the next 3 to 5 years. So how do you feel about the economic outlook a bit more longer term? And it's sort of sitting in the middle on the fence at 2.6. So yeah, that's the insights from the salary guide. I'm now going to hand over to Denise. Denise is there. You're Denise.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. Thanks.
So Denise,
Angela.
no pleasure. Denise is going to cover health and safety first. Yeah, and I'm gonna go off and have a look at the chat.
All right, thanks, Angela, and hello everyone. So yeah, I'm going to cover the HSE market in Melbourne, and it's probably no surprise to anybody that the market actually remains very tight and competitive for clients with candidates. What we're seeing is they're really more measured in their decision to either move from their current role, or if they are actively looking, then they're being more selective to the role and particularly the organisation that they join. In terms of changing priorities, we know that priorities have changed since COVID 2020, and we're seeing that candidates want that flexibility, but they also want the job security. The REM and the role, in contradiction actually to what Angela's just said, what we're seeing in Melbourne is actually less important, and it's really about the value of the organisation. For attraction methods, so what we're seeing is that traditional advertising isn't accessing the relevant talent. And so typically for most of the roles, we're relying on market mapping and targeted headhunting. So as I just mentioned, candidates are really looking for insights into the culture and the track record of the performance of safety within an organisation before considering any role. For example, we were recently supporting a not-for-profit in the health and disability sector, and it was key for the candidates to understand exactly how many cases there were, so they could get cases and claims, so that they could really get a better understanding of the performance of the business. So yeah, that's key to people, and that's what we're seeing and hearing from candidates now. In terms of specialists, we're also seeing in Melbourne a greater demand for specialist roles such as health and wellbeing, injury management, and safety specialists with specific sector experience. Organisations still want more for less, so role portfolios can still be fairly broad, incorporating that workers' comp, risk and injury management. From a culture perspective, with regards to the importance of the culture of organisation, and I'll refer to this again when I'm talking about the Melbourne HR market, what we're seeing and hearing is that people want to fully understand the organisation's commitment to safety in this instance. And when I talk about HR, the people and culture side of things. So, people want to go and be absolutely sure that the business is going to provide them with what they want. It's really just not about the REM or the title. And that's it for the health and safety. Can we move on to Melbourne? Thanks, Angela. Thank you. Okay, Melbourne. So, war for talent. There is a common theme here. The market is back. Demand is high and supply is low. There's a shortage of talent right across the market, including, we're seeing a lot of talent acquisition shortage, but also at that mid-tier HR generalist space. And what I'm hearing from candidates is that they're aware that the market is hot, and I'm speaking to people on a daily basis who it's great that the market is so buoyant, but they're too busy almost to be able to spend the time to focus on applying for a new role, which is why they then come to us, I guess. And according to Seek research, as of Monday, there are currently 1,066 active HR roles being advertised in Melbourne. But I guess the most interesting piece in this is that candidate applications are actually at an all-time low. Border restraints. So closed borders are also a huge factor, particularly at the junior end, because Melbourne is now reliant on its own workforce for the first time in decades. employers have to rely on their own efforts to retain their current workforce and upskill their current workforce. And yeah, interestingly, we're seeing an increase in the contract market here that would have, the more junior talent acquisitions and some of the mid-level roles that would have been sourced through working visas. Yeah, we can't do that at the moment. Market demands. So hopefully everyone is aware by now that what we're seeing in Melbourne particularly is a very healthy HR market, strong demand for HR generalists, TA, but we've also seen, and what I've seen in Melbourne particularly, is a huge demand for those specialist contract positions, particularly within areas such as L&D and OD. We've worked with clients over the last 12 months who've been undergoing huge digital transformations and are looking for those specialist skill sets. From an org design and development perspective, it's become a key area because of, looking back at post-COVID 2020, there's been a huge focus on leadership and development. So leaders have had to adapt their approach at the way they lead. And as always, the senior HR and lead roles are fewer. But what we are seeing is a level in retained business is on the increase, which means that what we're having to do now is more of the headhunting and the approaching. Salaries. So what has been interesting from our perspective and from my perspective, speaking to people on a daily basis here in Melbourne, is that the importance for candidates, and I mentioned this back in the HSE, is not just the increase in salary, but what else can the organisation offer them. What's important now is the value proposition of a company. Is it aligned to their values and purposes? And yeah, I guess where are they on their business journey? Are they, I've had a few roles recently where they are in high growth, and that is actually, a real benefit for somebody, that's sought after, particularly in the market. So solutions, and I don't profess to be able to give all of the solutions, but in terms of what can clients do to attract and retain top talent, and what can candidates do to secure the best role? Well, I think salaries and bonuses are always going to be a draw, but I think, again, moving back to that strong value proposition, that's important. And a couple of takeaways, I guess, in this market would be, we know that clients are busy, but perhaps, that we would advise that they move, quickly on interview rounds and shortlisting candidates. And, if you can potentially get some of the decision makers into the interviews to speed up the process, because what we're seeing at the moment is so many candidates are juggling multiple offers. So yeah, everyone has to be agile and move quickly. And that's me. So I'll hand over to Roxane, who will talk about Sydney.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Look at your slides. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Morning, everyone. There's going to be a little bit of an overlap from what Denise just shared from a Melbourne perspective, but from a Sydney perspective and what we've been seeing over the last few months since we ran the survey, I wanted to start by honing in a little bit on some of the data we've seen from the job boards. So March saw the highest number of jobs posted on Seek in its 23-year history. Yet applications per ad were at its lowest since 2012. I think the latest report as of June said there was a very slight decline in the number of jobs, but their ads do remain really high and applications are at record lows. What they can also see from this data is Australians are still viewing job ads in really high volumes. They're simply just not applying at the same rates as they were pre-COVID. And what's even more interesting is they're able to see and sort of heat map from activity on the sites that, whereas in the past people may have quickly scanned a couple of ads, maybe looked at the job title, a couple of the key responsibilities, and flicked in and out quite quickly. People are now reading every single word in the ad. They're taking the time to go from top right down to the bottom in detail, clicking out, clicking back in, and reading each ad on a page in a lot more detail. So I think what this tells us is that, you know, there is interest there, but the caution is 100% there too. And this is definitely something that we're seeing day in, day out in conversations with candidates. People want to know not just obviously about the details of the role, who the company is, but lots of questions around what do they offer in terms of flexibility, what are the values, what are the purpose, what's the purpose of the organisation. I'm hearing this more and more from candidates that they need to feel quite connected to what the business does. Also where they are on their business journey, again, like Denise mentioned, you know, what are the growth opportunities, and essentially what is that sort of business and job stability. I think there's a stat from Seek that says 2 out of 3 candidates are more concerned about job stability and security now than they were pre-COVID, which isn't a shock. So what we're really finding is that it's the relationships that we have on both sides of the process with hiring managers and candidates that means we're really able to provide the narrative around a role and the opportunity, provide those answers, and essentially get candidates across the line with the application, which is echoed by the Seek data. So it's really proving that human touch and providing that kind of trust in the recruitment process is important as ever. And just bringing it back around to salaries, you know, obviously since the survey was run, and obviously, you know, the heat's in the market, it's no sort of surprise to everyone that it's busy. We're definitely sort of seeing the impact it's starting to have on salaries, talent acquisition being a really easy example. You know, obviously, sadly, this market was heavily impacted during COVID. The good news is it's back with a vengeance, to the point where, you know, everyone seems to be screaming for recruiters. Salaries are back to pre-COVID levels and above, especially in that kind of contracting and tech recruitment space. And this is, again, an area where the impact of those closed borders has been seen in a really big way. It's interestingly created a lot of opportunity and movement at the senior end of talent acquisition. So I've had a couple of senior mandates on in the last 2 months where we've had 2 replacement roles for heads of talent acquisitions, where both salaries, base salaries, have increased at 22% and 24% apiece, which is pretty massive. And there are pockets of this happening across the board. So again, I've got a HR manager role we're working on that's a replacement role from just 12 months ago, and their budget's increased 12%. Just in recognition of where the market's moved. We've had another client that's come back with an increased budget of, I think it's 25k on base salary, so it's around 17%. You know, potentially an argument in that fact that they may have been underpaying before, but it doesn't hide the fact that they've not had success, whereas they may have had success in the past, and they're having to sort of come to the table with more money, essentially. So I think, to summarise for Sydney, it has to this point been busy. There's lots of opportunities, I think, if people are considering a move. But I think as we sit here in lockdown, we didn't see coming a mere 5 weeks ago. We've yet to see the real impact of what this Delta outbreak will be, and what that sort of means for the job market in Sydney and wider Australia. So I think on that point, thank you, everyone. I'll move back to Angela and some Q&A.
Thanks, Roxane and Denise. What I thought we might do is I'm going to put my team on the spot a little bit, and I might get them to be involved in the Q&A. So in a minute, they'll come off video and mute, but just because some of the questions that might come from the group will be for them rather than just me. So before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the questions that have already come through. I'm going to work backwards, I think, just from the latest comments. So actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to start at the top. So a couple of comments about flexibility and benefits. So I think somebody made a note in the comments about, is flexibility a benefit? And actually, it's probably not. But when we ask people, what are your top rated benefits? That's what they've come back and said. So this is actually something really interesting moving forward. And I spoke to a couple of people about it over the past few weeks. about maybe running an event on, or like a webinar on, how we actually maybe monetize what flexibility looks like. So maybe more for a kind of reward, compensation and benefits kind of forum. But, you know, because I guess when you think of benefits, you do think of monetary, but that's not how it's perceived in the market for the people looking for work. So just to cover that. The other thing too is somebody else asked in the Q&A, have engagement scores gone up in the past year? Would love to know how this has fared in the industry. So just a question for the group, if you could maybe go into the chat and just let us know if anything interesting's happened with your engagement scores in your organisation the past 12 months. I'll keep an eye on the chat for those answers. And obviously we don't need to name any companies, but it'd be good to kind of see what the trend is on the engagement scores in the past 12 months. So Rox and Denise, are you okay to jump back on for a sec? Because I think one of the questions that Todd came through with, he says, I'm less likely to look at advertisements that leave off a salary range. I would need to look at this for a motivation to move. I also look more on LinkedIn than anywhere else. So I just thought we, the three of us, could have a quick chat about that. And if anybody has some messages, I'll keep an eye on that. But I think it's actually really interesting because we talk about this a lot, about the salary ranges. Like when a client says you can't put the salary on, we're like, oh no, because you know the range of a job title to the salary is huge. So I think that's one thing. And then also it's interesting because I don't know if we have any stats on this, Mel in the background. I don't know if she's got anything. I'll watch out for the chat. But I feel like there's more salaries on Seek than on LinkedIn, but I think that's kind of changing now because there was no, I don't know, I just feel like there's more visibility for salaries on Seek. What do you guys think? What do you guys see?
Yeah, I'll answer. That's I think from my perspective, I think there always was a category for salaries on Seek, and I think it's something that LinkedIn have relatively recently introduced. I may be wrong. And I've had Seek, I've been talking to Seek for sort of 15 plus years, and the messaging has always been, as soon as there's a salary on an ad, applications are higher, just because there is that visibility around, you know, is this going to be a bit of a tire kicker exercise for me? You know, is this really, you know, the level I need to be applying at? Because I think especially when you've got something like a HR business partner, you know, that's such a broad range of level. And I, you know, another conversation I have with people is, you know, I'm looking at an ad, it's so hard to try and decipher what level it is as well, you know, because again, it's a bit of a catch-all, and if it's not clear, there's a hesitation there that is it going to be a waste of time?
If there's any questions for Michelle's kind of can't really talk, but Michele, if you did want to put your video on, feel free, but appreciate if you can't. But if there's any questions on the HSE market, please pop them through as well for Michele, just while we're chatting. A couple of things have come through on the messages about the engagement scores. So yeah, Christy says our engagement scores increased by 4 points, mixed but mostly positive. Issues coming through were workload and remuneration, which again is not surprising. So our engagement scores dropped minimally by 1%. And that's, let me have this, so I'm just going through the message. Engagements rate remained the same for operational staff as their roles continued as usual. But the office-based roles have become a little bit disengaged. Whilst they were enjoying working from home, they also miss the physical interaction of working with a team or in an office environment. It's interesting actually from the engagement perspective, even just on a personal level, you know, the whole going in and out of lockdowns in Melbourne's like pretty normal, but for Sydney it's not. So I think again, like each market experiences something different every time, don't they, with that whole engagement piece about being in the office versus home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then maybe over to you, Denise. Mike says LinkedIn has been surveying on job adverts. What would you like to see the salary range? So they're gathering data. Yeah, and I think yeah, it's just, I think people sometimes just want to get to the point, don't they? They just want to know, like they read it all, and then they get to the bottom and then see the salary, or
yeah,
they apply and then find out it's paying 50 grand less, and then they're just disappointed.
yeah. And then it's just a waste of people's time, I think, if, you know, if there is a role on there that looks ideal, and then the salary is just not going to work for that person, then yeah, it's a waste of their time. But that's why I think they need to speak to us to find out where it sits.
Sorry, Denise.
No, it's okay.
I think Todd's actually just said I participated in the LinkedIn salary range questions, and I did that. It was about a month ago, where they sent out a message to say that they were doing some benchmarking on titles. Did you guys, Denise and Rox, did you see that?
Yep,
I did. Yeah, did see it.
I think it was about a month ago. Yeah. Diana says our engagement scores have remained the same. Verbatim comments around working flexibility has increased as the company continues to be resistant on offering working from home when all roles, working from home to all roles that are able to work from home is ad hoc and only regular for employees with progressive leaders. Look, I think it is really a mixed bag with the flexibility, and yeah, flexibility means different things to different people. So it's a tricky one. All right, let me just quickly, there's 4 open questions, so I'll quickly go to that. Right, Florence asked, oh, hey, Florence.
Hi, Florence.
Yeah, are you finding a shift to more roles being moved to unadvertised targeted searches to address the low candidate application rates? Oh, yes. Denise and Roxane, over to you.
Definitely. No, we're
sure.
Definitely. I think, you know, I think the talent pool is more passive, and there's probably a couple of reasons. There's, you know, we've talked about it. There's the security, hesitation perspective, and Denise, you touched on it. I think just there's a lot of people that are quite inwardly focused at the moment. People are really busy. I think job volumes are high and expectations. They've got a lot going on. So yeah, absolutely. We've definitely seen clients come to us and sort of want to invest in a retained search, because, you know, we can invest the time in covering, talking to that talent pool, bringing them something that's a bit more compelling. Absolutely.
And Michelle's just popped through in the chat box that that's definitely relevant for HSE. But yeah, just to reiterate your comments, Rox, it's exactly the same for Melbourne. That's what we're doing.
And I think in Melbourne, just looking at how the work's been coming through lately and been delivered, we're also doing headhunting or approaches, even at a junior level. Kimberly on the team there has been doing a lot of approaches to get those good quality people. So it's not just a senior thing either, it's across the board. Fab. All right, let me just quickly check. From the limited information you have for Queensland, South Australia and WA, can you confirm the trends are the same? Do you know what? I would say that the trends are pretty similar across all of the states from when we looked, and you're right, it is limited data. We do have clients in those regions, and generally the trends are pretty similar across Australia. So I hope that kind of answers that question. We'll have more on Queensland next year, once we've got Kate on board focusing on that market. Sarah's, Michele, questions, Michele, a question for you from Sarah. I was referring to the rating that was on the slide with salary and benefits with the 3.3 score. Oh, I think this was in the chat earlier about the satisfaction. Sarah, we didn't actually ask about satisfaction last year. This is a new question. So unfortunately, I can't tell you the trend, but I'll be able to tell you next year. And Gareth asks, how do the trends that you've observed in Australia compare to what your counterparts are seeing through the rest of Asia? It's actually a really interesting question. We are doing a fair bit of work with Asia at the moment. Denise or Roxane, do you have anything you want to share just quickly on what we've come across with the Asian market? They're busy, we know that.
Yeah. They are, they're absolutely, the market is definitely back for them, but I think they are also experiencing similar frustrations and challenges as we are in finding that, you know, that top talent, particularly in those key specialist areas within OD, L&D, tech. Busy market, but again, you know, that there just isn't that supply of good talent.
I know that they're in contact with us quite frequently, asking if we've got you know, any sort of relationships down here where we could pass up names. And we have moved a few people around across the region. It's difficult with the border closures, probably less than we would normally see. But Gareth, it's a really good point, actually. If you've got any specific data or insights that you want on the Asia market, maybe just pop us an email or put it in the Q&A, and I can send you a link to some stuff or put you in touch with the right person up in Asia. They will also do their own kind of updates like we do if you need anything specific. But I think, let me look at the time. Well, we've got a few minutes, but I'm pretty sure that we've covered all of the questions. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, I think that's it. We're up to date.